At dawn the forest breathed before it spoke. Mist hung low between the trunks, turning the ground into a pale sea through which roots rose like the backs of sleeping creatures. Light arrived slowly, thin as a promise, slipping through leaves and touching moss with a gentle hand. Somewhere deep within, a heartbeat stirred, not one heart, but many, woven together by soil, water, fur, bark, and feather. This forest had learned to wake together. A young stag stood at the edge of a clearing, steam lifting from his nostrils as he tested the air. His antlers, still bearing the faint softness of youth, caught the morning light. He was called by no name spoken aloud, yet every animal knew his presence. He had been born during a summer storm, when thunder split the sky and rain baptized the earth. Since then, he had learned the language of leaves and shadows, of danger carried on the wind and safety whispered by birds. The clearing was older than memory. Long before the stag's mother had known fear, before her mother had known hunger, sunlight had pooled here, feeding grasses and flowers that bent like dancers. Bees traced invisible maps between petals. A fox crossed the far edge, red as fire against green, pausing only long enough to measure the stag with sharp eyes before melting back into the undergrowth. There was no challenge in that look, only acknowledgement. The forest recognized its own. Beyond the clearing, the trees thickened and darkened, their crowns knitting together to form a living ceiling. Beneath it, a she-wolf moved with her pack, paws silent, breath controlled. Hunger pulled at her belly, but patience guided her steps. She had learned that rushing the forest earned nothing. The pack flowed around fallen logs and thorny brambles like water around stone, their bodies language enough to coordinate without sound. When a hare burst from cover, panic blazing in its eyes, the wolves did not give chase. The forest had not offered that gift to them today. High above, an eagle rode a column of warming air, wings spread wide. From this height, the forest was an ocean of green, rippling with life. Rivers stitched silver paths through it, reflecting the sky. The eagle's keen eyes followed movement far below, deer, boar, even the slow procession of ants carrying crumbs many times their size. The eagle was not ruler here, though many believed the sky belonged to her. She knew better. The forest granted flight, as it granted breath, but claimed all things in the end. As the sun climbed, sounds layered upon one another. Birds argued over branches. Woodpeckers hammered out their truths on dead bark. Insects hummed, a living veil of vibration. Somewhere, deep underground, fungi exchanged nutrients and messages along threads finer than hair, binding tree to tree in a communion older than language. Roots drank deeply, passing water and warning alike. When one tree sensed the nibble of caterpillars, others thickened their leaves in quiet response. Survival here was shared. Near a stream, a bear rose on her hind legs and sniffed the air. She was old enough to remember winters when snow piled higher than her shoulders, when fish runs were so thick the water itself seemed to move. She had lost a cub once to the cold and another to a sudden sickness that spread like shadow. Grief had carved patience into her bones. Now she turned stones with careful claws, seeking beetles and larvae, content with small meals while berries ripened elsewhere. The stream gurgled approval around her feet. The stream began high in the hills, fed by melting snow and secret springs. It carried stories downhill, smoothing sharp stones and feeding thirsty roots. Otters played in its shallows, twisting and diving, their joy bright as sunlight on water. They chased one another for the pleasure of motion, not hunger, though hunger would come soon enough. For now, the forest allowed laughter. At midday, heat pressed down, and many creatures sought shade. The stag lay beneath a broad oak whose bark bore the scars of lightning strikes and centuries of wind. Acorns littered the ground, some already cracked by squirrels who scolded one another from above. The oak remembered more than the stag could imagine. It had watched the forest thin and thicken, watched fires cleanse and storms reshape. It had felt axes once, long ago, biting into distant kin. Those wounds still echoed faintly through root and soil, a memory of pain carried like a cautionary tale. The forest was not untouched by time. Paths scarred the edges where humans had passed, their footprints pressed into mud, their scent sharp and unfamiliar. Sometimes metal sang where trees fell, and the ground wept sap in silence. But the heart of the forest endured, retreating inward, tightening its embrace around what remained. Animals learned new routes, new rules. The stag had seen strange lights at night beyond the hills and heard thunder without rain. He did not understand, but the forest had taught him vigilance. As afternoon waned, clouds gathered, their bellies heavy with promise. Wind threaded through leaves, turning the canopy into a single sigh. The she-wolf lifted her muzzle and tasted the coming rain. It would mask scents and soften ground, making hunting both easier and more dangerous. The pack shifted course toward higher ground, where rocks offered shelter and vantage. They trusted the forest to guide them, as it always had. Rain arrived with a suddenness that startled birds into silence. Drops struck leaves like drums, then fell harder, pounding soil into a fragrant paste. The stream swelled, laughing louder. The bear retreated to a hollow beneath a fallen pine, curling her bulk against the dam. The stag rose and moved, careful to avoid open ground where lightning favored tall forms. He followed a path worn not by hooves alone but by generations, a memory pressed into earth. In the rain's veil, smaller lives thrived. Frogs emerged, their calls rising in chorus. Worms surfaced, drawing birds who darted and pecked with grateful urgency. The forest drank deeply, every pore open. The fungi sang softly, passing word of abundance along their threads. Trees relaxed their leaves, letting water cleanse dust and fatigue. When the storm passed, the world smelled new. Light broke through in slanted beams, catching droplets that clung to spiderwebs like strings of stars. A rainbow arched briefly over the hills, unnoticed by most but felt by all as a shift, a blessing. The eagle shook rain from her feathers and resumed her patrol, hunger sharpening now. She dove once, twice, before catching a careless fish near the surface of the stream. Life fed on life, as it always had, with no malice in the exchange. Dusk crept in on padded feet. Shadows lengthened, and the forest changed its voice. Day birds quieted as night singers tuned their throats. The she-wolf's pack fanned out, their senses sharpened. Somewhere ahead, a boar rooted in soft ground, unaware of eyes upon him. The hunt was swift and clean. When it ended, the pack fed in order, honoring bonds that kept them alive. What remained would feed beetles and birds by morning. Nothing was wasted. The stag stood at the clearing's edge again, watching fireflies rise like sparks from the grass. He felt the pull of the rut approaching, a restlessness that would soon drive him to challenge older, stronger rivals. Fear mingled with excitement. He did not know if he would win or fall, only that the forest would witness and remember. He lowered his head to drink from a shallow pool, his reflection trembling with each ripple. Night deepened. The bear emerged to forage on ripe berries, staining her muzzle purple. The otters slept in a tangle of bodies, breath synchronized. Owls ghosted between trees, their calls soft as questions. Above, stars pierced the sky where the canopy opened, ancient and indifferent. The forest settled into a rhythm older than counting. Yet even in this peace, the forest remained alert. A distant rumble, not thunder, rolled from beyond the hills. The eagle heard it first, a wrongness that did not belong to weather. The fungi felt it next, a vibration along their threads. Roots tightened their grip on soil. Animals paused, listening. The forest had survived many threats, but each new one demanded attention. The sound faded, and night reclaimed its dominion. Dreams took hold, of running and flying, of roots plunging deep and leaves unfurling without end. The forest dreamed too, in slow cycles of growth and decay, of seasons turning like pages in a book written by rain and sun. Morning would come again, as it always did, bringing light and choice. The stag would step into it, the wolf would hunt, the bear would feed, the eagle would soar. Trees would stand and bend, fungi would weave, streams would carry stories downhill. And the forest, vast and intimate, would continue to be what it had always been. Not a place apart from its animals, but a living body made of many lives, breathing together in the long patience of the world.